gente essa nossa programação de hoje, agora à tarde, com um olhar estratégico para um dos mercados mais promissores do mundo, como já foi dito, a Índia. Vamos entender como aproveitar as oportunidades comerciais e logísticas entre Brasil e Índia, com especialistas que vivem esse cenário na prática. Então, gostaria de convidar os especialistas que atuam diretamente na integração logística internacional e na movimentação de cargas entre Brasil e Índia. Convido ao palco o Steve Alartz, diretor da Food Care Plus. Steve. E o João Paulo Queiroga, ele é Sales Executive da KPM Logistics. Sejam bem-vindos, podem sentar aqui, ó, subir ao palco. Fiquem à vontade. Antes de dar o start aqui dessa palestra, gostaria de avisar vocês que essa palestra ela vai ser aberta, então ela vai acontecer com o microfone aberto, como está sendo feito aqui. E para quem precisa de tradução, basta colocar os fones de ouvido, que acho que, se não me engano, já vai estar sintonizado aí no canal, tá bom? É isso. O palco é de vocês. Fiquem à vontade.
Thank you. Test. Another city, another stage. And already immediately a difficult one for the translators. How do you say cheat sheet in Portuguese? That's a good one. Okay, that's a good one. A colinha. Yeah. Does everybody hear us very well? Okay, very good. Let's start by by introducing ourselves maybe. So my name is Steve. Don't even try to pronounce my surname in English or in Portuguese. I'm with IFPA too. Outside of my day-to-day job, I am a board member and the chair of the Supply Chain Council, now for about 2 years. Wonderful journey. And some of the insights that we have with the Supply Chain Council will be shared here today with you, and hopefully inspires you to explore more markets and to challenge your current supply chain and logistics service provider network. In my day-to-day, I manage together with an illustrious Chilean, I'm sorry, Ivan, Food Care Plus, which is a global logistics service provider assisting fresh produce companies to internationalize. And I'm going to leave it to João. Do I pronounce that well? Yes, João. To introduce himself. But I'm first going to say, João, thank you very much. In fact, we do have a relationship, a business relationship. We are very happy to work with KPM as our local eyes and ears in the Brazilian market. So they're a part of our global network. Ciao.
Yeah, thank you to Steve to open this space, to make the relationship with KPM even more close. Well, long story short, I work with international commerce since 2008, but focusing in logistics for at least for the last 10 years, and last 5, 6, focus on fresh food, fresh cargo actually, from Brazil and to Brazil. So that's straight to the point then. But later the people can know more about me, but yeah.
You mean personally?
If they want, yeah, I'm available.
Well, I've understood maybe that's I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to moderate this, but this is just a natural thing.
Yeah, it's in your DNA.
Yes. So you're, KPM is actually one of the most important players and market share holders for imports of fresh produce into Brazil, isn't it?
Yeah, actually it's the top one for imports and heifer cargo. KPM is the number one. It's a company located, the main office is in Santa Catarina. I work on the branch office in Recife. That is exactly to be close to the San Francisco Valley, the most important exporting area for mangoes and grapes. Yeah, but now, at least for the last 2-3 years, we're focused on exports also, because it's this piece of cake that Brazil can provide a lot.
It's great. That's why we call KPM a local hero, and we're very proud to have them in our network.
Yeah.
Now let's get to business. So, in the Supply Chain Council for the last 2 years, John, we've been reflecting on what had happened actually during the pandemic and the resolutions that came afterwards, post-pandemic. Pardon my French, but it has really been a shit show in the logistics and shipping industry. I'm in Brazil, you can speak that language. That's not really a problem. So a lot of disruptions, not only infrastructural disruptions. There are a few examples. Kathy yesterday referred to canal issues, where canal stoppages there. There's even places where bridges collapsed, what made that some waterways weren't accessible. There are constantly infrastructural problems. But at the same time, obviously, there are a lot of geopolitical uncertainties. I don't think I need to explain that to the Brazilian audience here, that is one of the things that is really a hot topic. But it's not only for Brazil, it's of course also for the rest of the world. And what we've actually concluded in the supply chain is the only way in order to, as a business in this industry, to protect yourself from all these uncertainties and to navigate through them is to make sure you diversify your markets as much as possible. And that's why we're going to talk today about India, obviously, because we see that as one of the rising stars, and we're going to also show you a picture why. The Supply Chain Council, with other words, has concluded that diversification is no longer optional, and we believe that one of the key drivers here is supply chain solutions. And I think KPM, as well as the company that I work for, and the IFPA pre-competitively, is looking for solutions in order to make sure that these solutions are being accessible as much as possible, as quick as possible. So, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, actually, sorry. Yeah, Mike. Yeah, it's interesting because KPM is being on the daily basis on our work is being fighting to grant the spaces and vessels. So even for the single markets like North America, but let's talk about Europe and Middle East, we face, even to these destinations, we have low availability of reefer containers sometimes during the season. We have a lot of vessels who wait to enter in Santos port. We have this problem in Brazil, concentrated in Santos port. We could be more well developed in ports like Salvador. Pecém Mucuripe is a rising port that can be an option to send the fruits off from Brazil to world. But there is no doubt, India, considering the size of the market, a relationship with Brazil, we have the BRICS that make the countries even more connected. Is something that I don't want to be actually being skeptical, but not being negative. It's challenging. We have a lot of struggle even to attend Europe with fruits. So considering India, transit times, services available, the trade lanes, the routes from Latin America in general, not only Brazil, to Asia, is something to be considered on that project. But well, Brazil, even in the Northeast, we like challenge. So
okay, I don't think anyone here in the audience doubts about the quality produce that Brazil, sends into the market. I mean, on this show, I've been tasting stuff that is absolutely amazing. But I think that there are many emerging markets that also Brazil, could target. One of those is India, and we presented, or we created actually only one graph. This should be more like a fireside chat that you're witnessing. But we wanted to show you something about the growth in the Indian market itself. And there are more markets than India, obviously, but we wanted to use, India as an example for the audience to get inspired. Just to give you an idea here, you'll see that for the last two, so from 22 to 23 and 23 to 24, these numbers, it's not even double-digit numbers. These numbers are massive. Now, does it mean that you can easily tap into these markets? No, of course not. I mean, because you need to educate yourself on how to do business. Today, this morning also, the presentation of Sunkist was amazing. He also gave a little bit insights on that. But that's about the market itself. I mean, for us as logistics service providers, it is about helping these customers to reach those markets. Now, luckily, India itself understands that growth, and themselves they are investing in substantial cold chain infrastructure, mega food parks. Now I'm using really the cheat sheet. I'm very honest. In some of the ports, substantial investments in Kandla, in Navasheva, also on the west, on the east. So for us, they're not just building infrastructure, they're really building ambition. And we know that that is one part of the story, obviously, and that is often where you see the complaints coming from the industry is, what about these logistic service providers? Where are the carriers? Where are the terminals? We today already have so many problems. How can we even, go after a market like India and that is potentially something you wanna speak about
Yeah.
today for India, as an example.
Yeah, so I could give you guys two examples. One of them is quite recent. It's about the grapes, because we opened the Chinese market for Brazilian grapes. But before that, we have the lemons. There is no doubt about our capability for producing and Chinese consumption of these fruits, but facing exactly that fight, shelf life versus transit time. I could say there is no Brazilian melon yet in Chinese market. So exactly thinking outside the box and with that platform that Food Care can handle and this idea, we can do something different, and that solution could be applied for these two examples I say to China.
If the Brazilians now want to reach the Indian market, for example, what services are available and what lead times are there, and are they attractive?
To India?
Yeah.
To India, average transit time with carriers. We have some person from Maersk here watching us.
Welcome. We got a carrier in the audience.
We got to make it faster. Huh? So, so we can say 35, 40 days. For example, something interesting that because India is open and putting the eyes in Brazilian citrus.
Yeah, they're working on the protocol.
So we have done a lot of containers, even routing to you guys, to Europe, then 17, 19 days of transit time. And even if face some quality issues in the limes, you can imagine in 40. So later on, after you have more comments, but I could add some solutions that could be considered using technology that make that big. That is the point. Until we don't have lower transit times, we don't have to increase the shelf life of the fruits. Of course, we have to combine it: lower transit times, bigger shelf lives. But well, depends on the carrier.
So it's a plea for more services and shorter services.
Certainly.
I think that's an excellent bridge to one of the other initiatives from the Supply Chain Council, and we'll welcome you to hear about that in October at the Global Show. We're going to launch the transport data platform, and the idea actually is that we are going to align the demand better with the supply in the market. So what's the idea? Is that we as logistics service providers, alongside the growers, the exporters and the importers, are going to prepare a data set that allows carriers to be informed 6 to 12 months in advance where we think the demand will be. Now, there are beautiful examples of that. It's not that we invented the warm water. For example, Chile already knows for a long time the Cherry Express, but South Africa was introduced this year to the citrus loader. Those were temporarily seasonal services that were deployed by carriers in order to align better with the demand. That was coming actually from periods where a lot of shippers have seen immense losses because of the unavailability of services and fruit that was obviously already picked. So that will allow us all to do better capacity planning, and it's an invitation, of course, to anyone to participate to that. To what extent do you think KPL can also contribute to that platform?
Yeah, actually, considering the experience we have loading fresh fruits from Brazil, so we have to start to work since they are vesting. So we have had some options, chemical options, green belts options that extend the shelf life. But well, taking care about the whole chain, it's more than mandatory. I could say there are people considering even application of radiation on fruits to extend shelf life. So of course in micro levels, but it's totally reasonable and doable. Well, the point is KPM is following the fruits since the farm, following on the packing house. That some packing houses are specialized and used in the whole products, but it's a lack of options that of packing house for limes, for example, they're doing that. Yeah. You need to spread the word and make them understand that investing a little bit more, the fruit should be a little bit expensive, but to reach other markets. I don't know, maybe sometimes you have air freighted fruits that's not common to do by air, but if the destination market demands it, the final client, let's say the Indian guy that looking for a fresh lime, you buy for it. So
So I want to tap into that. I mean, because it's also a bridge, let's say, to the next topic. You as KPM, you invest here locally in understanding the product very well. You're in touch with the growers. You're visiting the facilities. And I think that is an extremely important thing. Now, whenever someone wants to reach a new market, obviously, not only choose, obviously, the people you work with in order to market your fruit, but also choose the right service providers in order to make sure that along the value chain, everything is understood very well by everyone. And I think that that makes a difference, like yourself in your company, making sure that you understand the product before it is actually transported. And it actually means you're not just a transport provider, you're actually also someone who understands the product. Well, you need the same in India. I can tell you, if you do business with India and you don't have a company over there that is your eyes and ears on product that lands, then you could get seriously in trouble. Just like Sunkis this morning said, if you don't understand the culture, if you don't find the right people to do business with, and you are not set up in supply chain, I can tell you it's not going to work. Now, tapping into that, strategic learning is also something I think that is something that we want to share with the audience. Not only your product, of course, that you know best, but also the supply chain itself. Because I think that is an important opportunity before you enter a market. Do understand, how these markets operate. Also the last mile. Don't just ship fruit in a container, send it to an overseas market and assume everything will go well, because it won't. And I think that for everyone here, obviously, I hope we have a lot of members already here, but that's where IFPA, for example, stands for. It's a broad network. You can learn a lot in this organization through the different councils that exist and where you can participate, and you can learn about how to work with new markets. On the quality, I want to continue a little bit on that. Most likely you have already had a lot of, let's say, comments from some of the Brazilian shippers trying to reach overseas markets, and then let's say constructive feedback coming back about the quality of certain produce. How do you see that?
Actually, the thing is, when you bring an idea of that no one brought that before, it's normally to find resistance. But it's interesting when you say we get closer to the growers, because we need to bring the growers close to the operation, because even to follow the cargo to India, I can perceive, I can think a lot of ideas. For example, is an intermediate terminal that can reapply something on the fruit to make the shelf life longer for the second leg. But the growers together with us can construct the solution that can fulfill and provide them the possibility to open that market. Yeah. So that is the main point. We have to work together. It's a whole team, because as you said, we are not only transporting.
No.
Yeah, because we do only the transport. Given the main business aside, so we'll be only spot shipment or one single shot. It's facing problem, the people give up. Even more, for less problems, the people give up for exports, for example.
Well, I heard two words. I heard shelf life, and I heard collaborate better. That's really great, because there's another thing I want to talk about. That's the supply chain of the future. But maybe first we open the floor for some questions.
We have 12 minutes.
Yeah?
Let's do 1 minute for questions then.
Okay. Questions?
Questions? People got interested.
We have a question in the first row.
Well, thank you very much for the presentations. It's very, very rich to hear about new markets. Brazil is still heavily dependent of the European Union for exports, and we do obviously do North America as well. But you mentioned about China, and particularly grapes and melons. How India, it's obviously a massive market, and was highlighted this morning by Adriana about the growth of their market. Yep. What advice would you give for Brazilians looking to tap into their market? As you mentioned, you need to get to know really well, but we know that it's not only about shipping. You need custom clearance, you need freight forwarder, you need land transport once you get there. And most of the time you also need some added service at destination. So how would you guide someone looking to tap into the new market?
Yeah, I think it's your
What?
friends, Intercon, supposed to be here also talk with us. But you can help. I can have my comments, but you first. Others first.
So you're gonna come into what I say? Okay, that's great. Okay, so thanks for the question. It's a very good one. Well, I think we also need to, and that's a general remark, we need to challenge the status quo on how logistics is being handled today. Frankly speaking, you should ask the questions. When my cargo, so you need to build a scenario, when my cargo hits the land, who is taking what decision? Who is controlling what? Even if you would rely on your fruit importer or the person that you work with or the distributor on helping you to assist with certain of these things, still you need to ask for how is my produce going to be handled? Who is going to clear customs here? What shipping lines are going to carry it? What happens if route number A doesn't work? So you need to be super critical. It means you need to actually, before you enter a market, prepare really a logistics report, a supply chain report, and I mean in general with logistics, also market entry, the contingency plan, what if something doesn't work really out? And I know it takes a little bit of an investment, but if you work with the right partners in the market that you ship from, you should get the answers on these questions before you put any produce on the water. That's my take on that.
Something I could say that this talking here, let's say we could say it's the first chapter. It's something that we are collaborating, planning together. I suggested, and Steve quite embraced the idea. Maybe the next step is to bring. Actually, have an Indian guy here already, but it's only one. But next step is to bring an Indian delegation to visit farms here to check for talking about citrus, but we could. So I have heard that it's 6 Indian guys visiting farms in Petrolina looking for mangoes, and India also produces mangoes. So it's not about where it's being produced, because compensation between countries is always exists. And there is a third chapter to take Brazilian farmers to visit, maybe in IFPA Fresh Produce Mumbai, to go there to understand how is the retail in the market. So that is development. But certainly that third chapter there is exactly to understand who are going to be the importers, how is the custom clearance there, how's the regulations, the sanitary regulations is being developed, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very good question, because it's not only to ship, they put the limes or the mangoes on the sea, yeah, it's going to be there any time. So you invited to go to India next year, maybe.
Yeah, you come and join us. Well, no matter what, I think we need to be radically transparent. We need to be radically transparent who we work with, what everyone's responsibilities. We also need a little bit more accountability. So everyone that taking a certain role also should be accountable for that role. And that brings us a little bit, maybe before we open afterwards for more questions, that brings us to one of the most important initiatives that the Supply Chain Council of the IFPA has taken, and that is the supply chain of the future. And the supply chain of the future wants to create a pre-competitive platform where we are going to reduce waste, where we are going to predict shelf life, where we are going to collaborate better and share data in a way that everybody feels comfortable with, to lead, and now it comes, to a more fair value chain where the grower is paid, potentially even with dynamic incentives based on better cold chain practices, better quality. We are talking with retailers, distributors, we have all the stakeholders in there in order to even think about changing the way that we are contracting today. We know the concept of minimum price guarantees. We know that product is being sent and then people say, the quality was 10% less, we're going to pay you 10% less for that, etc., etc. No, we want to reach to a certain situation where there is, again, more transparency. And in that project right now, and that's the great thing, it is actually being invested by the industry. Almost $130,000 now has been invested in this project. A lot is more to come. And it's truly a global project. So it would also help if you want to reach new markets, to the gentleman that asked the question, to see how all of these stakeholders actually perform in that, and not just do everything based on assumptions. And I think this is where we need to go to. We need that paradigm shift. We need to move away from the way that we've been doing logistics in the 80s and the 90s, which is still the case. Although we have a lot of fancy tools nowadays, we even have AI, but I can tell you there's not a lot of AI used yet in logistics, because otherwise everything would be fantastic, which is not the case. So maybe we talk a little bit further on the supply chain of the future. Does anybody has any questions about that? And if not, of course, if you go on the IFPA website, we have a special page for the supply chain of the future. We do have participation already in this project in India, which means there are stakeholders in India that are really willing to participate and invest also in this platform. So it would be a good way to start. Any other question on the supply chain of the future? Sorry, I don't hear.
Can you share what the objectives are when the supply chain of the future work gets all the way to Bright? What do you expect to happen across the industry?
Well, what we think is that, first of all, we're going to do better investments that actually lead to better produce, a better customer experience, and it's good for everyone because it will lead to increased consumption. Everybody knows that a good consumer experience will lead to that. It also, and it's maybe harsh, but we think that all these stakeholders right now that only extract value from the supply chain, that they should be removed, because ultimately it's always the growers that pay. So more volume, more increased revenue for the growers, a better supply chain in general, and more transparency. Those are the most important goals. Shelf life of food waste reduction is a part for us of that increased volume, because ultimately, again, food waste is paid by the grower and the exporter. Ultimately, that's usually how it goes. Any other question? We got 4 minutes left. Ask whatever you want. So maybe then I'll move back to you, Joe.
We were very clear. There's no doubts on
Oh, that's a
the
compliment.
audience. Yeah.
So how do you think KPM can contribute, from a Brazilian perspective, from a Brazilian gateway out to the world, to the supply chain of the future project at IFPA? What is your take on that?
Well, not only in Brazil specifically, but I think we should consider Latin America in general. But KPM is available to provide the experience, even on imports of the fruits. But we already experience on exports, to get closer to the guys and guide them how to develop. And actually, I have specifically my personal way to develop logistics business, because I was working in a fruit brokerage. So understand how the fruits are negotiated. It helps a lot to understand how the conditions, even to support on logistic decisions. You mentioned about the brokers, those middlemen. Actually, of course, not India, but now Europe is the biggest nightmare for the exporters, because they are on their hands mostly. So lack of transparency, a lot of claiming guys. That there are some companies that open the claim even before open the container. My friend Clovis knows about it.
Yeah.
So to India, besides the commercial issue to sell the fruits there, it's challenging, but I think it's totally possible if you have the whole chain give the proper attention. India is not just a market. Now I will quote you, my friend. It's a huge field of opportunity. We just need patience. That is not a thing I have a lot, but I can practice on that. Partnerships, just like we have, and persistence. We have to keep that focus on the track. So maybe today someone could say, Brazilian citrus to India, man, what do you say? But maybe in 10 years we can discuss and check how huge is that trade between these two countries. And it's okay. There's not that so impossible thing.
So that transparency is really, again, it resonates. It's true. I've also heard a lot of stories the last 2 days where Brazilian growers feel that they can't trust the information they get, and this is really what we need to surpass. So will KPM also contribute to the mission that the supply chain of the future has, you know, being one of the most important players? Are you going to jump into the project that we initiate as from IFPA?
Oh, in my opinion, I read it in. I thought you know that.
No,
if you didn't perceive, it's okay, man.
This is an avant-premiere.
I'm on the
really,
track already.
guys. He didn't expect that question because officially, you know, this very important logistics service provider for fresh produce in Brazil has not officially been asked whether they want to take part and will join the supply
But I'm
chain.
not jumping in the swimming pool alone, huh?
Well, to end up with that, we'll do the swimming later. Thank you, everyone, for this.
Thank you too, guys.
Witnessing us. Cheers.